All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo Sports Talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Big thank you to everyone out there, as always, for watching, for listening, for following, for subscribing, regardless of how you consume Talking Buffalo. I do appreciate you guys very, very much. Today's episode, as always, is presented by Sunny Reds, 1841 Abbott Road, sunny Lackawanna, literally just minutes up or down the road, depending on which way you're coming from Highmark Stadium. Incredible food, great drinks, a fun vibe. It is a great place to be. Sunny Reds has been a big supporter of this show. So if you like this show and you get a chance, you're out that way, make sure you stop up at Sunny Reds. All right, this is going to be our week 18 Buffalo Bills biggest takeaways. This is something I've done every week throughout this season. Typically, I watch the all 22 film and sift through the PFF grades, and then I come away with more conclusions. But I'm going to keep it real with you guys. I'm going to be honest with you. I did watch the game back. I did look at the PFF grades, but I did not sit there and go through what normally is a 3 to 4 hour process at a minimum of all 22 film. Just did not want to do it this week. I do have takeaways, but obviously in a season finale where the Bills, they cared a lot more about staying healthy and trying to get a few guys some financial or personal incentives. They cared about that a lot more than playing to try to win a football game. So I'm certainly going to keep that in perspective. I'm going to break these down today by a few things. 4 good things that I really liked about this game specifically. And then 4 things I'm not going to go as far to say that I hated or maybe even that I disliked. We'll say 4 things that were not so good. And I'm going to do my best to make this not a long episode, which if you listen to the show regularly, especially yesterday, a far cry from yesterday's show. I had Joe from Queens on, and as we always do following a Bills game, we had our live instant reaction Bills post-game show. And man, that went like over 90 minutes. In fact, it went over 90 minutes, and there were several non-Bills things that I really wanted to get to that we never even discussed at all. I wanted to talk some more Buffalo Sabres, and this would have been all near the end of the show, but I had some Sabres stuff that I wanted to get to. I had some thoughts on WWE premiering on Netflix on Monday night. Joe's a big wrestling fan, as am I. Wanted to spend a few minutes on that. I had some thoughts on Mulligan's Brick Bar, another Allentown institution burned to the ground. I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about that. Did not get a chance to, because what dominates sports talk in Buffalo nowadays, including this show, is the MVP. I don't even want to say conversation anymore. It almost feels like a debate or even a fight between Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, and started getting into supporting cast, doing more with less. And that just evolved into a 20-minute, at times, shouting match. Actually, for a real fun podcast, to be honest with you. If you haven't listened to yesterday's show, go back. And if you don't want to hear about any of the live reactions from the game, which Joe said straight up, Joe didn't even watch the game, so he had no thoughts on the game whatsoever. But if you want to hear us get into it over Lamar and Josh Allen and the respective supporting cast, fast forward to like maybe an hour or 10 or so into the show. It was a lot of fun. But anyway, like I said, for today, it's going to be takeaways, 4 things I really liked, 4 things not so much. Quick turnaround here, and we're going to get right into Denver mode. Obviously, I mean, who cares about this finale? It's all about the playoffs now. We know who, we know where, we know when. It's the Bills versus the Broncos, wild card round, 1 p.m. on Sunday. God, I love that. CBS is doing the broadcast. Jim Nantz, Tony Romo will be in town. I love that. The Bills are 7.5-point favorites right now. I don't love that. More on that in just a few minutes here. Some actual, before we get into any takeaways from Sunday, some quick news. Although I'm not really going to get into any opinions on it today, but reports are surfacing on Monday that the New York Jets have reached out to Tom Brady, to the Bills, to request permission for offensive coordinator Joe Brady to interview for the Jets job. One of at least four that I've seen reported for the Jets to request for an interview on Monday. So it's not just Joe Brady, it's several candidates that the Jets already are reaching out to. Again, I don't have any thoughts on it yet. Well, I do, but there's other stuff that I'd rather talk about today. Maybe at some point during the week we'll circle back to Joe Brady. Not something that I'm worried about, but I will say it's not something I love either. And it's not just specific to the Bills. I hate when a team is in the playoffs and a team tries to request and get an interview with an offensive coordinator during the playoffs. I know it's not fair to 30 other teams, or 14 other teams, I should say, that are actually in the playoffs. There's 12. I'll get the math right. Because there's two teams that have a bye. The two teams that have a bye, those coordinators have more time. If they want to have an hour, a couple hour interview with a team, I get it. The other teams, they're preparing for, the biggest game of their season. And to have anything take away from that whatsoever is something that I absolutely hate. And I'm not just saying that because it's Joe Brady. Again, I know Arthur Smith from the Steelers, their offensive coordinator, was somebody that the Jets reached out to as well. But anyway, I'll reserve comment on that for later. As for this game here, we're talking again, takeaways, not counting the significant injuries. These are like four things that I really liked about Sunday's game without counting significant injuries, because obviously that matters most. And anybody with any kind of functioning brain should come to the conclusion that the best thing to happen on Sunday's game for the Bills is that, at least we know right now, there were no significant visible injuries that were suffered by any Bills players during this game, which means, and this is assuming Terrell Bernard will be good to go. Sean McDermott said late last week that Terrell Bernard, who's nursing, I think, a quad injury, that he was trending towards being okay for this upcoming game on Sunday against Denver. That aside, as far as we know, at least as of right now, no significant injuries whatsoever. The Bills are going to go into the playoffs pretty much healthy, and that's all you can ask for. Wasn't quite the same last year. Plus, guys were coming back that were very rusty. I remember last year's wildcard game. The Bills came into the game relatively healthy, although Rasul Douglas missed that game. I do remember that. But anyway, it was kind of one of those, when they played Pittsburgh, won the game, kind of lost the war type deals, because in that wildcard game, they lost both Terrell Bernard and Christian Benford to injuries, which of course haunted them the following week against the Kansas City Chiefs. Rasul Douglas tried to play in that game, but basically was playing on one leg, and for that reason was useless. So obviously the most important thing is that the Bills look pretty damn healthy going into the playoffs. So that is huge. But in terms of the four things that I liked most from Sunday, one of them involves a guy who did not see the field, and that's Matt Milano. Matt Milano did not see a single snap for the Bills on Sunday. And if I'm being honest, I am at least, I don't want to say I'm stunned. I'm not stunned. I'm not shocked. But I am at least mildly surprised that Matt Milano didn't get some run. I thought, and again, this is just me and my personal opinion, that he looked the best he had in his last game of the four that he played against the Jets last week. But I still felt like there was some rust there. He did whiff on a tackle. There were a couple little things out there, and I thought maybe Sean McDermott would want to get him some work. Now, this position has been something that I kind of went back and forth with over the past few weeks. When it gets to playoff time, well, who's going to be your guy? Is it going to be Matt Milano, or is it going to be Dorian Williams? If you're getting something even close to the Matt Milano that we've seen throughout his Bills tenure, that's a no-brainer. Of course, it's Matt Milano. But Matt Milano has not looked great by any means, at least early on in his return. And I think Dorian Williams has played pretty damn well. He's athletic. And I was certainly able to at a minimum, make a case that, hey, this is about winning football games. You lose one, you're done. You got to put your best 11 guys out there on defense. And I thought there was for sure a case to be made that Dorian Williams might be better right now than Matt Milano. So I kind of would have liked to have seen, again, this is just me personally, a little bit of work from Matt. But that said, the reason why I put this in the good category is because I'm just one dude sitting in front of a microphone here in my home studio. Okay. I have an opinion. You have an opinion. We all have opinions, but I'm not naive enough or egotistical enough to think that my opinion is more informed, I should say, and better than Sean McDermott. So Matt Milano not playing a single snap on Sunday. What that tells me is that Sean McDermott is confident enough in what he's seen from Matt Milano, and he's confident enough in his player that he's ready to go into the playoffs. He determined that Matt Milano playing at all on Sunday, the risk wasn't worth the reward. Like maybe Milano gets 3% better by playing 15 snaps, but the risk was getting him injured again. Let's not forget, he came back from a major injury and then he missed a game because of a groin injury. And then he came back last week and again, played pretty damn well. So Sean McDermott clearly determined that Matt Milano is good to go. And this whole Milano versus Dorian Williams thing, time will tell if Milano starting is the right move. But what I think is pretty obvious at this point, going by the fact that Matt Milano did not play at all, Dorian Williams saw not a lot of time. He didn't start, but he got a handful of snaps. I think he got like maybe 15 or so snaps on Sunday in Foxborough. That tells me that Matt Milano is your starter. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. So I'll put that in a good column. No Matt Milano on Sunday. Sean McDermott is full faith in him. And I'll say one other thing. It's certainly possible. Like when I say Milano's looked a little rusty, the biggest thing I think that we all see, the speed looks there. Reading the plays looks there. You go back to the Jets game. I feel like the anticipation of knowing what's coming is certainly coming back to Matt Milano. The one thing that looks a little worrisome is his tackling. And maybe that's because his arm, he just doesn't want to fully commit to using that arm, to getting it out there, wrapping it, and exposing himself to injury. Now, that could be part of a plan. Mentally, that's been his mindset. Come playoff time, lay it all on the line. Like Matt Milano's not going to try to short arm a tackle because he's worried about getting hurt again, not in the playoffs. So I think you're going to get full go Matt Milano. And hell, man, if you can get 90% of what Matt Milano has been come Sunday, you'll be in really good shape. So I really like that. Another thing that I liked, a fellow linebacker, Joe Andreessen got a lot of work on Sunday. And by a lot of work, I mean, he quite literally played every single defensive snap. All 64 snaps for the Buffalo defense, Joe Andreessen was out there for. So why do I have this in the good column? I don't think Joe Andreessen, was particularly impressive per se on Sunday. I don't think he did anything spectacular. He certainly is not going to make you miss Terrell Bernard being out there. But at the same token, I also don't think he looked completely lost. I don't think he looked overmatched whatsoever. So again, why would I have this in the good column? Well, I can tell you this. It's not for, the whole Buffalo Joe Cinderella feel-good story angle, although it is really, really cool to see him out there playing football and starting a football game. That's awesome. But that's not why I have him in this column. I have him in this column because the dude needs to work. Because as things stand right now, Joe Andreessen, not Dorian Williams, is Terrell Bernard's backup. So going into Denver on Sunday, if something happens to Terrell Bernard, it's almost a certainty that it's going to be Joe Andreessen who goes into the football game. I know common logic would say, well, Dorian Williams should be that guy. Dorian Williams, Matt Milano, your two best linebackers on the field. But Dorian Williams has not played any Mike. He has not played Bernard's spot at all. He has exclusively, since training camp, worked at Matt Milano's weak outside linebacker position. So Dorian Williams going in isn't really, as far as we know anyway, not an option. So with Balin Spector on IR for the 19th time in a few months. Um, Joey Drees is the guy. And again, Terrell Bernard is he's a great player, but he gets banged up. He's hurt right now. He didn't play on Sunday. He's the one guy that was ruled out on Friday. Well, actually, Amari Cooper got ruled out, but that was for personal reasons. But at the beginning of last week, Sean McDermott said that Terrell Bernard was going to be out. So he get dinged up, and I do expect him to play, just so we're clear on that. But I think it was really important for Joe Andreessen to get as much work during an actual NFL game as humanly possible. Now, I know this was the New England Patriots that they played, and I know for a lot of the game, it wasn't even the Patriots starters. There's some good players out there. It was live, full speed NFL action. So I love the fact that if something happens to Terrell and he does need to come out of the game for whatever reason on Sunday or at any point, that Joe Andreessen got a full game's worth of work in there, 64 snaps. Other thing I liked, a rookie. I thought Javon Solomon had a really, really strong game. He played 59 snaps. He had 7 quarterback pressures. He had 7 tackles, including a couple nice. Now, Javon Solomon's been pretty much exclusively a pin your ears back and try to get after the quarterback pass rusher. But I actually thought he had a couple nice run defense plays too. In fact, I believe, I don't even have him in my notes, but now that I think about it, he recovered a fumble too. Right place, right time. Anyway, I was impressed with him. I thought he played really well. Won a perfect game. He had a couple whiffs. Should have had a sack for sure. 1, quite possibly 2. He's got things to learn. Quite a ways to go. But you look at him in a game like this, and I feel like you can't help but see a little bit of Von Miller in him. I think he's got some of that Von Miller in his game. It's exciting. I don't see anything much going on in terms of the rest of this season, barring injuries, of course. But I think Javon Solomon has played well enough and shown enough that I think he could be a real player on this football team as early as next season. Like, I could see the Bills moving on from Von Miller for sure after this season. And I could see Javon Solomon kind of picking up that role where you're playing 30% of the snaps, pretty much pass rushing situations, kind of what Von Miller has done for the Bills this season. And I think Von's got 5, 6 sacks, none bigger than Sunday. But I can see Javon Solomon growing into that role as early as next season. So I was impressed with him. I liked what I saw from Javon Solomon. And then the last thing I'll put in the good column is players getting their incentives. They played that game very, very intently and clearly with the goal of getting as many players incentives as humanly possible. And maybe there's a couple that we don't even know about, but the ones that we do know about, they were reached, and it was really fun to see. The biggest one, at least financially, of course, was Von Miller. Von Miller needed a sack to get a $1.5 million bonus. Fortunately, and I'm sure Sean McDermott and Bobby Babbage feel the same way, this wasn't something that had to linger until late in the game because he got that sack literally on the 3rd play from scrimmage for New England. So he got the sack, went out of the game, did not return. So he gets $1.5 million for that. Obviously, his teammates were really happy. Quick little side note. I wonder to what extent Sean McDermott would have left Von Miller in the game to try to get that money. Like, for sure, the first and probably the second quarter, for sure, he would play in passing downs. But do you go into the 3rd or even the 4th quarter if Von Miller doesn't have that sack and trying to get him $1.5 million? I actually think Sean McDermott would, which is funny because a couple of years ago, maybe even just a year ago, I would have said, no way, Sean ain't doing that. And we'll never know. But credit to for even playing Sean, for playing Von Miller and giving him an opportunity to get the sack. So that was really cool. Matt Collins on the Bills' second drive of the game. He needed 2 catches to have a 50K bonus kick in. He got both of those. Very happy about that, as were his teammates. Probably the coolest one was the punter, Sam Martin. And this is where, like I said, the Bills were coaching in playing this game to be healthy, to get some players some looks, and also very clearly to try to get these guys some money. The organization was very, very, very willing to help players get their incentive. And if you need proof from that, say what you will about Sean McDermott, but one thing Sean McDermott ain't doing all season long is punting from the opponent's 35-yard line. But he did that on Sunday. Martin had a kick. It took a bounce, and much credit to Jamarcus Ingram, who made a diving right before the goal line, knocked the ball, kept it in bounds, and that play got Sam Martin 100,000. Funny, too, because Jamarcus Ingram admitted after the game he did not know about Sam Martin's bonus. Said Sam Martin's going to take him out for a nice dinner. But that's really cool. That's really cool. A lot of people on the sidelines were very happy for him. Clearly, Sean knew about it and wanted to give him an opportunity to punt. And then the last thing, which had nothing to do with money, but bringing James Cook back into the game when the Bills got inside the 4-yard line to give him an opportunity to get a 16th rushing touchdown. I thought that was awesome. And you could tell how happy James Cook was about that. Again, he came into the game. He needed one rushing touchdown to tie O.J. Simpson's team record. And he also needed 17 yards to get 1,000. They kept him in the game early till he got those 1,000 yards, took him out. And then they brought him back in the game later when the opportunity was there to get him tied with O.J. Simpson for the team record. So again, that's an organizational thing. And I love to see that. And that is something that is not lost on the players, the current players. And I promise you, that's not something that'll be lost on future free agents too. Like when you're doing your due diligence and you're shopping yourself around, and once you get past just money and you start looking into things like winning and culture and what it's like to play for a team, what that team is like, these are things that players are going to remember very, very fondly. So I thought that was awesome as well. All right, real quick break, come back. I got a couple of things, not so good, we'll call them. Again, I'm not going to say I hated them, but not so good things. And then I do want to spend at least a few minutes here kind of getting into the Denver Broncos. All right, we are back here by Buffalo Bills' biggest Week 18 takeaways. I just went over 4 things that I liked very much. 4 things that I did not like so much. I'm going to start with, I didn't love the safety play at all. Damar Hamlin played every snap. He was one of 4 Bills defenders to play every snap of this game. I thought he looked bad early. Understandably, you know what? That's not pile on Damar Hamlin. I know it's such an easy thing to do. A lot of Bills fans feel some kind of way about him to the point that I almost think it's weird. I have not been a big fan of his play for a lot of the season, but I do think after a rough start to the season, I thought he settled in and he was playing pretty damn fine before he got hurt. Rib injury, missed 3 straight games. This was his first game back. I kind of feel like this game was a little bit of a microcosm for what his season was. I thought he looked really bad early on. Again, understandably so, though, after missing 3 straight games. But then I thought he was fine after that. He was pretty fine after that. That said, I'm not really confident in him, nor have I been. To be fair, I never really have been very confident in Damar Hamlin. And I know there's not a lot of tough decisions out there. Again, I think this was more fan, maybe even little media driven when it would come to Milano or Dorian Williams. And I feel like we already got our answer with that. The safety position might be the one thing that Sean McDermott may have a tough decision to make over the course of this week as they get ready for Denver. Cole Bishop played in this game. Same kind of deal. I thought he was fine. None of the Bills safeties really had a good game per se. I'm also not going to put a lot of stock into it where they're probably thinking, let's just get some reps. Let's get out of here healthy. So again, I'm not going to go nuts saying, oh my God, this guy sucked. It's hard to say that when you're playing a team where you're not even really trying to win. But anyway, back to Sean. I think he might have a tough decision to make this week between him and Bishop. And I'm going to give you what I think is probably a little bit of an unpopular opinion. Even though I just sat here and told you I'm not that confident in Damar Hamlin, even though I don't think Damar Hamlin did anything on Sunday that if you don't like his game, that he won you over. But I think that Sean McDermott is going to stick with DeMar Hamlin for the Denver game for sure. And part of that reason is this. DeMar he's not going to do a lot of spectacular things. He's not very athletic, especially not compared to somebody like Cole Bishop. I don't think he's as good against the run as Cole Bishop. I think there's, if this is a game of chess, I think there's moves and chess pieces that Cole Bishop has that I don't think DeMar Hamlin just has in his toolbox. But, and this is big to me, the one thing that DeMar Hamlin is going to do for you is not get beat deep. Like, ain't nobody getting behind DeMar Hamlin for a long pass. It hasn't happened, at least unless I'm forgetting about a play. It hasn't really happened all season. Now, I know he's taken some bad angles on a couple runs that have been costly. He's made mistakes, but he has not made oh shit, the guy just got behind me. Here's a 60-yard touchdown mistake. Cole Bishop did that against Houston. Cole Bishop got beat a couple times against the Jets. Taylor Rapp, another guy who I thought looked kind of bad on Sunday. But again, I'm not going to put any stock into it. He was just still getting his feet wet a little bit, but he got beat bad for a long touchdown just this Sunday. That is the one thing that DeMar Hamlin has not done. And when you look at guys like Cortland Sutton and Melvin Mims Jr. for Denver that like to go deep, they like to throw that over the top deep ball. Give me that, low ceiling but higher floor type safety who's just not going to give up the 50, 60-yard play in DeMar Hamlin. So I do think for that reason, I think Sean ultimately sticks with DeMar. But I didn't love his game, and I did not love Taylor Rapp's game. I didn't like the safety's game much at all against Sunday. But like I said, I'm being nitpicky here. I'm not going to bitch too much about this type of football game that we saw on Sunday. The second thing, not a great day either for the rookie Keon Coleman. He had 2 catches on 9 targets. That's not good. But I'm going to put a lot of that. I was going to say some, actually a lot of that on the quarterbacks. Not great throws, kind of easily defended. But what I didn't like about it, if you go watch some of those routes and you go watch those replays, not a lot of separation. I do think that separation issue that Keon Coleman has and a lot of his routes is real. And I felt like that was on display some on Sunday. And then he also had another mental mistake. He had a pre-snap penalty, and I hate that. I really do. So, again, not a lot of separation, not a lot of wiggle room for Mitch Trubisky or Mike White to thread the needle, because it wasn't like Keon Coleman was wide open and these late bad throws gave the defender a chance to close on the ball. I look at Keon Coleman like this. For now, anyway. Talking about for now, not the future, the present. He's a big play guy. Keon Coleman, and he's a good run blocker, by the way. But I'm talking about in the passing game here. He's an improviser. He can make a big play if something breaks down. And that's huge. If the pocket collapses and Josh gets on the move, it seems like Keon Coleman's that guy that'll get 40, 50 yards down the field, make a big play. He's got some great athletic skills. We saw it against the Jets game when Josh Allen rolled out, threw it up across his body, and Keon Coleman with mad hops gets up and gets the football. I'm not downplaying his talent, and I'm certainly not downplaying what I think his role could be in a Super Bowl run. I'm just saying on a snap-to-snap basis, drive-to-drive basis, that trust for me ain't quite there yet. And I do think on Sunday we're going to see more of Amari Cooper than we've seen at any point during this season. And I do think you're going to see a lot of Matt Collins, because I think there is a trust factor with Matt Collins that's not there for Keon Coleman. And so we're clear, so people don't misconstrue this and say things that I'm not saying here. I still like Keon Coleman. Keon Coleman can go win you a football game. Keon Coleman can make that big play that's going to win you a game. Keon Coleman could win a jump ball. He could take a football away from a defender. There's a lot of things he could do. I'm just saying the trust factor concerns me. The separation factor concerns me. The mental factor concerns me a little bit. It seems like every week, again, pre-snap penalty, dropping slants, things like that. It's a little risky when you go to Keon Coleman. Someone like DeMar Hamlin, I said, he doesn't have a high ceiling, but he's got a very high floor. I kind of feel like Keon Coleman, very low floor, very high ceiling. So we'll see how things play out with him, but I did not love his game at all on Sunday. I also didn't like very much what I saw from Austin Johnson. I thought this was a really good opportunity. He was healthy and active 2 weeks ago, played 43, what I would call highly uneventful snaps, 24 pass rush opportunities, just 2 pressures. I wonder if he's inactive next week against Denver. I wonder if the rookie Dwayne Carter gets the call, who was okay in Foxborough. Dwayne Carter had a couple good moments, a couple forgettable ones. All in all, I thought he was fine. Yeah, just Austin Johnson. I'm not seeing it. I think Jordan Phillips and Quentin Jefferson suit up for sure on Sunday. Obviously, Oliver and Jones starting. That's 4. I think they play 5 tackles. So it's going to be either Austin Johnson or Carter. And I didn't see anything from Johnson on Sunday that makes me think that he should be the one who starts at a Dwayne Carter. I'm not saying it's a foregone conclusion because Johnson is a veteran. Dwayne Carter's a rookie. But based on at least what I saw on Sunday and the fact that he was inactive a couple of weeks ago, wouldn't surprise me at all if he's inactive on this Sunday. Then the last thing, and look, I'm being really nitpicky here. Basically a preseason game in the fourth quarter primarily, all right? So I get it, I'm being nitpicky, but Mike White looked really, really lousy throwing the football. Arm looked like a little noodle arm going. Am I wrong? Like his throws looked really weak. 3 of 11 for 28 yards. Don't care about the stats. I just expected a little bit more. Like Mike White has been in this organization now long enough. He knows the playbooks. He knows these players. Like, put it this way, based on this one game, Mike White, they signed to an extension, a 1-year extension last week. And my first thought was, I immediately went to over the cap and looked at Mitch Trubisky's numbers and found that the Bills could save like $2.5 million if they cut Mitch Trubisky after this season. And my first thought was, well, there you go. The Bills just signed their number 2, or they extended their number 2, Mike White, and they're going to save $2.5 million and get rid of Mitch Trubisky, which still could happen. But based on this game, I am not, I'm not on board right now with getting rid of Mitch Trubisky and making Mike White my number 2 quarterback. Again, just based on this game, I'm not going to get out of hand here, but yeah, dude, Mike White, not good. All right. That's it for New England. That's it for the regular season. It's all about Denver. It's time. And the Denver Broncos are a good football team, folks. They're a 10-win team. They are, I will call them this, they are legitimate competition. Legitimate competition. Like, this ain't the Mason Rudolph quarterback 2023 Pittsburgh Steelers coming to Buffalo in the wild card round. This ain't the 2022 Skylar Thompson quarterback Miami Dolphins coming to town for a wild card weekend. Like, this is the first time in 3 years that the Bills are going to have their hands full. Likely, they should have their hands full in a wild card round. You can make a very fair argument that this is going to be the toughest wild card round game for the Buffalo Bills of the Josh Allen era. That said, I'm not going to change course here. I'm not going to be Mr. Worrywart right off the bat. This was the matchup I preferred when the alternative was the Cincinnati Bengals. And I think you'd have to be nuts, quite frankly, if you thought otherwise. Cincinnati won their last 5 games of the regular season, including beating Denver a couple weeks ago. And Joe Burrow is an absolute Buffalo Bills killer. So I wanted no part of the Cincinnati Bengals. I've been very open about that for weeks now. I have said throughout this season, beyond the Bills, of course, when I looked at other teams in the AFC, it would always start with Kansas City, and then I would go to Cincinnati. Like, what are they doing week by week? And when they got off to that shitty start, I was like, just put them away early. I don't want them around. Fortunately, if you had that line of thinking, that's the way it played out. They dug themselves a little bit of a hole too deep to get out of. So, again, I'm still glad. I'm not saying that I'm not doing cartwheels that they're playing the Bengals, because this is a legit football team. Like I said, this ain't last year's Steelers or 2 years ago Miami Dolphins. This is a good team, very capable of winning. But I'd still prefer this matchup over Cincinnati. Now, we'll talk more about Denver, in depth and in detail throughout the week. But the biggest thing to know about them is their defense. It just pops, okay? Their defense is really good. It's got a lot of talent. Patrick Surtain is an all-pro cornerback. Zach Allen is probably going to be on many all-pro ballots this year at defensive tackle. He has been an absolute stud. Nick Bonito finished the season with 13 and a half sacks, among the leaders in the league. Jonathan Cooper had 10 and a half sacks. So you have two edge guys who had 13 and a half and 10 and a half sacks. Nobody on the Bills had more than 8 and a half. Brandon Jones, a really good safety. Very good football team, man, especially on defense. They led the NFL in sacks with 63. Way by a big margin, too. Like second place was Baltimore, who had 54. It's kind of a wild story, because the Bills don't give up sacks. Josh Allen's been sacked 14 times this year. And potentially between Denver and if they could get past Denver, very likely Baltimore, you're talking about a team in Buffalo who don't give up sacks and going against the teams that have the top 2 sack totals in the NFL over these next 2 weeks. Certainly not going to get ahead of ourselves here. But, again, this defense, they ranked near or at the top, like metrically advanced metrics in a ton of defensive numbers. And they also allowed the 3rd fewest points per game in the league. So this is a team that looks good metrically, most sacks in the league, and the 3rd fewest points per game in the league. Offensively, middle of the pack team, statistically, but they've been on a roll lately. They've scored 27 or more points in all 7 of their last 7 games. So their last 7 games, they've scored at least 27 points every time. Of course, the Bills lead the league in scoring. Cortland Sutton is a big boy, man. He makes big boy plays down the field, and he's gotten a lot better as the season went on. He went over 1,000 yards this Sunday. Marvin Mims has turned around his career from being potentially like a bust to making really big plays. He's been great down the stretch for them. Of course, the rookie quarterback, Bo Nix, he's improving. Got a little bit of that Josh Allen in him for sure. So there's a lot to like. If you're a Denver fan, there's a lot to like about this football team. That said, the stat that might stand out the most, they are 8-0 this year against teams that had losing records. 8-0. So if you have a losing record, you ain't beating Denver. Literally, 8-0. Conversely, 1-7 against teams with winning records. Not going to count the Kansas City Packups on Sunday. That was literally second and third string out there for the Chiefs. They've only won 1 game all season against a team with a winning record. And that vaunted Denver defense that I just spent several minutes here propping up, they're prone to giving up big games and points. They've given up 30 points to the Bengals. They gave up 34 points this season to the Chargers. They gave up 32 points this season to the Cleveland Browns. They gave up 41 points earlier this season to the Baltimore Ravens. And those totals, by the way, is one like they were, early in the year, and then they really shut things down near the end. That's all in the back half of the season. So 30, 34, 32, 41. So they've given up lots of points, even though the defense is really good. I remember the Tennessee Titans came to Buffalo earlier this year with that dominant defense. That's what they were being heralded as. Metrically, statistically, they looked incredible. And the Bills just smashed them. Now, I think Denver is a far better football team than the Tennessee Titans. Let's be clear about that. But the point is, kind of throw those numbers away now, because they don't mean anything at this point in time. And I think it's a big ask. It's a big ask if you're thinking that Denver could come to Buffalo and upset them. This is a team that hasn't been in the playoffs since 2015. To come to Orchard Park in January with a rookie quarterback and knock off the Buffalo Bills, a team that just feels destined right now for special things. It's been a special regular season, and it just feels like there's something in the air to have a special playoff run as well. So it's a big ask. Rookie quarterback on the road, tough environment, all that stuff. But you can't say they can't, because I'll tell you one thing, the weather is not going to bother Denver. That's for sure. It's supposed to be, I think the early forecast is like around 30 or so. I don't care though if it's 30. I don't care if it's 5 degrees, windstorm, snowstorm, don't matter. Denver is equipped and very well are used to the weather. So weather ain't going to be a factor. And I also don't forget they got a head coach in Sean Payton that's literally won a Super Bowl. So they have a coach who's won it all. And if you care about these type of things, Denver did go to Buffalo last year and win Thursday Night Football on the road, although that game was just kind of like an anomaly. It really was just a weird football game. They won out a field goal at the end when the Bills had too many guys on the field. Don't really need to recap that game. My whole point is it was only a year ago. A lot of those guys were there for that, so they might give them a sense of confidence as well. All in all, it's just shaping up to be a fascinating start for the playoffs. And I'm going to have Matt Warren from SB Nation on the show tomorrow. We're going to talk more about this game. And I also want to spend that episode largely just appreciating what the Bills have given us as fans during the regular season as well. We're in playoff mode. It's do or die. It's go home. We all know what the goal is, but I do want to take at least a little bit of time and just sit back and kind of talk about so many things that went well for the Bills this year. And conversely, the rest of the division just falling apart. And then I got a few other things planned later for this week, including a chat with Denver sports guy, well-known NFL insider Benjamin Albright. He's going to be on the show later this week. It's going to be fun. So, again, Matt Warren with me tomorrow. Lots of stuff coming up. This is what we waited for, folks, all season long. The playoffs are here. Plenty more to talk about. In fact, we'll do more tomorrow.